Welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for checking out my video. My name is Emily, or La Movie Mija. I'm a part-time filmmaker, full-time movie lover, and today I want to dive into Thunderbolts. I won't be doing the spoiler-free review. This whole video will be spoilers. So if you haven't seen the movie, make sure you save this video, watch the film, and come back later and we can chat. Please make sure to like and subscribe to this channel if you want a movie friend like me around to give you the latest movie news and reviews. All right, let's dive in. Everything after the intro will be spoilers, so you've been warned. All right, let's talk about Thunderbolts. The fact that they released this movie during Mental Health Awareness Month is pretty remarkable. Not only is this a central theme throughout the film, but it is a topic that they handle pretty beautifully. It's so nuanced and layered, and it feels incredibly realistic that it made watching this movie almost unbearable at times. But man, do we need this movie more than ever. This is the 36th film in the MCU, and that's kind of a wild sentence to say, to imagine that there are 36 films and we probably went to the movie theaters for most of those movies. Wow. Like, what is time? And I have to say that this is the most surprised I've ever felt walking out of a Marvel movie. I didn't expect to be as touched as I was watching this film. Not to say that there's plenty of films in the Marvel Cinematic Universe that I've cried to before. Of course, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, Avengers Endgame, Guardians of the Galaxy. Like, there are handfuls of the films that I've cried to. There's just something about this movie that was just so disarming. And I think it's because this movie feels incredibly current. It feels like the MCU, for the first time in a long time, has its finger on the pulse of what people are collectively feeling. And I think that's part of the reason why we're all having such strong reactions to it, or at least I am. It's not just that this film tackles depression, it's that it's so specific about it. You see it in a very cinematic way, and you see it in a very literal way. Like, there's so many things throughout the film that are in service to telling this story about what it feels like to have this void and stand on the precipice of it as you're staring down your own demons. And we get that from the very opening scene of the film, where you see Yelena drop down from the second tallest tower in the world, and the way she just kind of poetically drops over the side of the building, like she's embracing the fall that's about to happen. It's so eerie to think that her falling off of that building kind of echoes the way that we saw Black Widow meet her own demise. The main difference between Natasha and Yelena in that moment leaping from the cliff is that Natasha had a motivation, she had a vision, she was doing this act for something in service of a greater good. For Yelena, she is leaping off of that building without any direction, without anything to motivate her, nothing to connect her to. She's almost free as she's falling into that metaphorical void because she feels so untethered. And then you have the conversation between Yelena and Alexei on the New York street corner, and she tells him very specifically, very vividly describes to him the cadence of her everyday life. How she's on her phone, thinking about all the terrible things she's done, haunted by that guilt, goes to work, comes home, drinks, and then is back on her phone trying to push down all those horrible feelings that keep her up at night. And if that's not a very vivid picture of what I imagine I know myself, and I imagine a lot of my close friends and relatives probably do on a semi-regular basis, then I don't know what is. But there's just such an interesting way that this movie is kind of depicting that within time, because the time that passes in the actual movie is not very long. I think it's a few days, but you can feel the weight, like an audience member, you feel the weight of those 35 other Marvel movies, the legacy of all of those things that have happened. You feel that time, and you're carrying it with you into the movie theater, and you feel like these characters have so much weight to them. I feel like this movie could have almost been set in one location the entire time, with just having these different conversations and revelations about themselves and each other and how they can work together as a team. But I like the way that these locations that they travel to are almost symbolic of their character journeys. Like, they're starting a mile underground and they have to together lift themselves out of the void. And then as they travel across the desert, and that's a very biblical way of demonstrating characters like overcoming a great obstacle. And just like Alexei does later on in the film, he interrupts that barren desert, that vast void of emptiness that they're traversing together with his giant red limo to help them along in their journey. And now they get to the top of the tower, and so you have this like vertical feeling of them ascending as a team together where they meet their biggest challenge yet, Sentry. Let's talk about Sentry for a second, because his character, Bob Reynolds or Robert Reynolds, is very different from Yelena, and he has his own demons that he has to battle with. What fascinated me the most about Bob Reynolds' character is there's an exchange. I can't remember which characters are having this conversation, but they're essentially saying, like, when you give Captain America, Steve Rogers, the super serum, he becomes Captain America. Like, Steve Rogers is the type of man who would become Captain America. But then you have Sentry, you have Bob Reynolds who has a lot of trauma, Bob Reynolds who, you know, went to the super serum program out of desperation. He didn't offer himself. He wasn't a voluntary army recruit trying to do good. He just surrendered himself to this medical program and then became Sentry, this all-powerful being. And I love that they called out specifically that it's the differences in these men, not the serums that they get, that make them who they are. In the same vein, you have John Walker, who is kind of this disgraced Captain America, a character who most of us hated, right, going into this movie. So I love anytime a movie can change my perspective about a character, and that's what they did with his character specifically. All three of those characters, you can see that they're making the point that the serum doesn't make the hero. It's these like innate qualities they have inside. And that in particular feels like it's touching upon something within the realm of masculinity and this epidemic of loneliness that is a topic of conversation right now. Independent journalist Vera Papasova recently went undercover for a year dating like alt-right men, and she found that when most of those men were having what they would describe as political conversations, they were actually describing relationship issues. So they were having conversations that would be more suitable for a therapy session than for a political discussion. But they categorize all of those issues as political issues, and they don't see them as like something that they need help figuring out from a professional. Anyway, all that to say, her quote was, "You don't need to be a neo-Nazi, you need therapy." And I could be reaching, but I think that there's something there in Marvel specifically calling out the difference between someone like Sentry and someone like Captain America and how they got there. Ultimately, this film felt very meta, and Marvel was asking the question, what's the point? What's the point of living? What's the point of the MCU? What are we all doing here? And I feel like for the first time in a long time, they had a point. They had a point to make, and they were so direct about it. What's the point of superhero stories, and what's the role that they play in your lives? Like, do we need heroes? And you can also see that parallel with the story of the Thunderbolts. Do we need heroes? Do we need a new Avengers? And Marvel boldly answers that question with a movie, and with the movie's title at the end, when we know that the asterisk now means the new Avengers. What's the point of Marvel? This could be the point of Marvel, is having these new nuanced takes, these brilliant performances. My goodness, like Florence Pugh. You know, when you see Florence Pugh in sweatpants, that it's about to go down. That's my girl. I love everything she does, and her haircut, beautiful. But the way that she is able to toe the line between the humor and the despair is so incredibly powerful. And I was really curious as to how they nailed down that exact tone that really works on me. And I found out that the creators, the director, the writers for the Thunderbolts also worked across some of my favorite pieces of media, including Beef, Bojack Horseman, The Bear, Transformers 1. So essentially things that are just built to make you cry. If you have a sarcastic like personality, if you are someone who just knows what it's like to feel so alone, these all capture that feeling of loneliness and that feeling of despair so beautifully, but with a levity to it that feels a little twisted. But really, that humor is the only way you can make it through the day. All of that, I think, is channeled perfectly through Florence Pugh's performance and the character Yelena. I would be remiss not to mention the sound and the cinematography in this movie. First of all, the cinematographer was the same person who gave us The Green Knight, and that movie is terrifying. And I feel like the mood and the look of this movie is so visually captivating. I love that it has its own unique look. I feel like some Marvel movies kind of all just blend together. You could pick a frame out of any movie, and like I wouldn't know which movie it was were it not for the characters in the film. But this movie has motifs, especially that visual foreshadowing that we get of the long shadows as Florence Pugh is kicking ass down that hallway, and that long take viewed from overhead, that was awesome. But we see those shadows and those voids, and the idea of falling or the different vertical spaces that they use all harken to this idea of overcoming the darkness. And the score by Son Lux, like, it is I think it's part of what made me cry so much. They also scored Everything Everywhere All at Once, so they kind of know what it's like to face down the pit of despair. Truly, this movie just worlds beyond what I thought it was going to be, is particularly touching for me. I really appreciate specifically how they call out breaking cycles and not letting people spiral, because that is something I've definitely experienced before, and it's not fun. Anyway, this was supposed to be a quick video, but I've clearly gone on too long. I just really appreciate getting to talk about this film. I know I was a little bit all over the place, but I just really wanted to get this out to you. So yeah, I did like this movie, and I was really knocked on my ass about it because I really didn't expect for them to tackle depression and give us such a nuanced and very specific take on it in ways that were just really hard to watch. But I'm so appreciative of that a movie on this scale that's going to have this kind of audience addresses these things. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and I just want you to know that you're not alone. If you're watching this video, I got you. Okay, that's it for now. Make sure to call your mom or text a friend or leave a comment down here below and know that you are not alone. Thank you so much again for watching. I'll see you next time.